Linda finally remembers the voice of the man who kidnapped her, and it leads her to a warehouse filled with evidence. But before she can escape, the kidnapper steps out of the shadows and reveals the truth. Her real father is the billionaire's father, and the billionaire's mother orchestrated everything. Ethan didn't let Linda hold the photograph for long. He took it gently, but there was nothing gentle in his eyes as he studied the shadowed figure behind the little girl in the rain. His face became a still mask, the one he wore in boardrooms and hostile negotiations, except now it wasn't money on the line. It was Linda. "They want you to panic," he said, voice even. "They want you to make mistakes." Linda's fingers were numb. "That picture, how did they get it?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer that required a thumbprint, and pulled out a slim metal case. Inside were several photos and documents, evidence collected over years, the kind that never saw daylight. He placed the new photograph beside an older one, taken by police the night Linda was found. 2 images of the same child, 2 different angles. 2 pieces of a puzzle that had refused to fit for far too long. Then Ethan's gaze sharpened. "The background," he murmured. Linda leaned closer. Her breath caught when she recognized it, not from memory but from the faint details in the photo itself. A crooked street lamp, a cracked curb, a sign with peeling paint. Ethan tapped the edge of the picture. "That's not random," he said. "That's a location." Linda swallowed. "You can identify it?" Ethan's mouth tightened. "I can," he said, "because we almost did. Years ago. We were 1 step away and then the lead went cold." Linda's heart hammered. "Where is it?" Ethan looked at her, gaze steady and heavy with warning. "If I tell you," he said, "you don't leave my side, not for a second, not for pride, not for stubbornness. Do you understand?" Linda's throat tightened. She hated being treated like glass, hated it. But the fear curled under her ribs, and the message on the back of the photo still burned like ink on skin. She nodded. "Okay." Ethan exhaled once, controlled. "It's an old dock district," he said. "Warehouse Row. The kind of place nobody goes unless they have a reason." Linda's stomach sank. "Why would I be there?" Ethan's jaw flexed. "Because whoever took you wanted you hidden," he said. "And because someone wanted your mother desperate enough to sign anything they put in front of her." Linda's chest tightened at the mention of her mother. The grief was strange, real, sharp, but unanchored, like mourning a voice you can't remember, only the ache it left behind. Ethan's phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced down, then his expression turned colder. "They're moving," he said. Linda's skin prickled. "Who?" Ethan didn't answer her directly. He tapped the screen and put the call on speaker. A calm, professional voice filled the room. "We have confirmation. Rowe met with someone outside the city last night. Same third-party pattern. He's being paid to keep pressure on Linda until after the wedding date." Ethan's tone was lethal. "Do we have a name?" A brief pause. "Not yet, but we have a vehicle. We're running plates." Ethan's gaze flicked to Linda. "Keep digging," he ordered, "and tighten surveillance on Rowe. If he breathes, I want to know." The call ended. Linda's hands shook. "So, Gavin, Rowe, he's still trying." Ethan's eyes hardened. "He's cornered," he said. "Cornered men either surrender or get violent." Linda's throat dried. "Do you think he'd hurt me?" Ethan moved to her in 2 strides. He cupped her face with both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. His touch was steady. His expression was anything but. "I won't let him," he said, "and I won't let the person behind him touch you either." Linda's breath trembled. "Ethan, I'm scared." "I know," he said softly, and then his voice hardened again. "Which is why we're not waiting. We're going to the docks." Linda blinked. "Now?" "Now," he repeated. They didn't go in the black car. Ethan used a different vehicle, unmarked, plain, forgettable. 2 security cars followed at a distance. Linda sat in the passenger seat with a seatbelt locked tight across her chest, like a restraint, fingers curled around the star pendant at her throat. The city shifted as they drove. Glass towers gave way to older buildings. The streets became wider and emptier. The air changed, salt and rust, the ghost of the ocean nearby. Linda watched Ethan's hands on the wheel. Calm hands, controlled hands. But she could feel the tension in him, the coiled readiness. "How do you know where to go?" she asked. Ethan didn't take his eyes off the road. "Because I've been here before," he said. Linda's stomach dropped. "When?" "Years ago," Ethan replied. "The investigators had a tip. We searched half the district." "And you found nothing?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "We found evidence someone was cleaning up after themselves," he said. "Which meant we were close." Linda swallowed. "So this photo, it's them taunting you." Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. "It's them admitting they were there," he said, "and that they've been watching." A shiver crawled over Linda's skin. She forced herself to breathe. "What are we looking for?" Ethan slowed as they approached a row of old warehouses. Most were abandoned, windows boarded, doors chained. A few had new locks and fresh paint, the kind of renovation that tried to hide rot beneath. "We're looking for anything that ties the will condition to your disappearance," Ethan said. "Anything that proves coercion. Anything that tells us who arranged it." Linda's heart hammered. "And if we find them?" Ethan parked, turned to her. His eyes were dark, unwavering. "Then we end it," he said. Warehouse Row looked like the kind of place secrets went to die. Ethan stepped out first, scanning the area. Linda followed, coat pulled tight, shoes crunching lightly on gravel. Security stayed back, but visible, close enough to reach them in seconds. Ethan guided Linda toward the oldest building on the corner. The sign above it was faded, the letters nearly gone. A chain hung on the door, but it wasn't locked. Ethan's gaze narrowed. He pushed the door open. The smell hit Linda first, dust, oil, and something sour, like old water trapped in a forgotten basement. Inside, the warehouse was dim. Light spilled through cracks in the boarded windows, striping the floor. Stacks of broken pallets leaned like drunk giants. The silence was thick, almost deliberate. Linda's breath sounded too loud. Ethan reached behind his coat and produced a small flashlight. He clicked it on and swept the beam across the floor. Then he stopped. Linda followed his gaze. There were footprints in the dust. Fresh. Her skin went cold. "Someone's here," she whispered. Ethan lifted a hand, signaling the security team to spread out. Then he moved forward, slow and silent, like a predator. Linda stayed close despite her fear, because being near Ethan felt safer than standing alone in the shadows. They reached the center of the warehouse, where an office space had been built into the structure. Glass windows, a door, a small platform raised 2 steps above the floor. Ethan tried the office door. It opened. The room inside was surprisingly clean. A desk, a chair, a filing cabinet, a laptop closed on the desk like it had been left in a hurry. Linda's pulse thundered. "This isn't abandoned," she whispered. Ethan didn't respond. He moved to the desk, opened the laptop. It required a password. Ethan's jaw clenched. He pulled out his phone and sent a message, short, precise. A moment later, one of his team entered, carrying equipment. Within minutes, the laptop was unlocked. Linda watched as files appeared on the screen, and then she saw it. A folder labeled with a date. Her wedding date, the one that should have been Saturday. Linda's stomach turned. Ethan clicked it open. Inside were documents, legal drafts, financial transfers, and a scanned copy of the will's condition clause, with notes in the margins. Linda leaned in, heart racing. The notes were typed. Cold, clinical. Subject must marry Roe. Ensure compliance via father leverage. If resistance occurs, initiate fear response. Reminder photo sent. If subject recalls past, escalate. Linda's vision blurred. That's about me, she whispered, voice cracking. Ethan's expression went dead calm, which was somehow worse than anger. Yes, he said. Linda's hands trembled. Who wrote it? Ethan scanned the metadata, fingers moving fast. Then he froze. His eyes flicked to a name. Linda saw the change in his face and felt her blood run cold. What? She asked. Ethan's voice was low. This file was created by someone with access to my family's private network, he said. Linda stared. What does that mean? Ethan's gaze lifted to meet hers, and for the first time Linda saw something like disbelief, then fury. It means, he said, this didn't happen near my family. He swallowed hard, as if the words tasted like poison. It happened inside it. Linda's heart stopped. You think someone in your family... A loud, metallic slam echoed from somewhere deeper in the warehouse. Everyone froze. Ethan's hand shot out, pulling Linda behind him instantly. Another sound, footsteps, running. Ethan's voice snapped into his calm. Move, he ordered. Block the exits. Linda's breath turned ragged. Her mind screamed at her to run, but her body stayed locked behind Ethan's solid frame. The footsteps got closer, then a figure appeared in the doorway of the office. A man, tall, wearing a hood, face partially covered. His eyes were sharp, hard, familiar in the way nightmares felt familiar. He looked at Linda and smiled under the mask. You're not supposed to be here, he said. Linda's stomach dropped. The sound of his voice clawed at something deep in her head, like a hook catching on old memory. Ethan stepped forward, voice lethal. Remove the mask, he commanded. The man laughed softly. Still ordering people around, Hawthorne? He taunted. Some things never change. Linda's heart hammered. He knew Ethan. He wasn't some random thug. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The man tilted his head, gaze sliding to Linda. Ask her, he said. She's the one who disappeared. Linda's breath caught. Her vision tunneled. The warehouse, the dust, the light. Everything blurred as her mind flashed. A memory slammed into her like a car crash. A man's hand grabbing her wrist. Her mother screaming. A door slamming. A voice, this voice saying, Quiet. You're coming with me. Linda stumbled, clutching her head. No, she gasped. Ethan glanced back, panic flickering for the first time. Linda, the masked man's eyes gleamed. There it is, he said softly. The memory. I wondered when it would come back. Linda's voice shook, raw. You, she whispered. You took me. The man spread his arms slightly, mockingly. And look at you now, he said. All grown up, all polished, all expensive. Ethan moved like lightning. In 1 second, he was in front of the man, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him back against the office wall. The glass rattled. Ethan's voice was a low snarl. You threaten her again, and I will end you, he said. The man didn't look afraid. He looked amused. Touchy, he murmured. You always were. Then he said the words that made Linda's blood turn to ice. She was never the target, he said. Her mother was. Ethan's grip tightened. Explain. The man's gaze shifted to Linda again, almost pitying. Your mother, he said, voice calmer now, loved someone she shouldn't have, someone powerful, someone married, someone who needed his reputation spotless. Linda's throat tightened. I don't remember her, she whispered. I don't remember anything. The man chuckled. You will, he said, and when you do, you'll understand why she had to break. Linda's chest burned. She died heartbroken, she choked. The man's smile faded into something colder. She died because she wouldn't sign, he said. Not at first. Ethan's eyes blazed. Sign what? The man's gaze flicked to the laptop. The will, he said. The condition. The surrender. Linda felt like she was drowning. My mother didn't write that, she whispered. The man shrugged. She signed it, he said. But not because she wanted to. Ethan's voice was sharp. Who forced her? The man leaned closer despite Ethan's grip. Ask your beloved family, he murmured. They're the ones who have the money to rewrite destinies. Ethan's jaw clenched so hard it looked like it might crack. Name them! The man laughed again, then suddenly jerked his head back, and something small and sharp glinted in his hand. A blade. Ethan reacted instantly, twisting away, but the man used the motion to slip out of Ethan's hold and shove backward, crashing through the office door. Security surged forward. But the man was fast. He bolted into the warehouse darkness, weaving through pallets like he knew the place by heart. Don't chase too far. Ethan snapped into comms, then turned to Linda. Linda was shaking violently, tears spilling down her face. Ethan caught her shoulders. Linda, look at me, he said firmly. Stay with me. Linda's voice broke. He said my mother was forced, she sobbed. He said she loved someone. Ethan's expression hardened. We'll find out who, he said. But you heard him. This connects to power, money, reputation. Linda swallowed hard. Your family, she whispered, terrified. Ethan's eyes flicked to the evidence on the desk. Someone with access, he said grimly. Not necessarily blood, but close. A shout echoed from the warehouse. Security was calling out positions, footsteps pounding. Then silence. Ethan's phone buzzed. He answered sharply. Report, a voice replied, tense. He's gone. Back exit. Vehicle waiting. We couldn't get plates, covered. Ethan's eyes turned into ice. Linda whispered, shaking. He was here to scare me. Ethan nodded. And to warn us, he said. But he made a mistake. Linda looked up. What mistake? Ethan held up the photograph again, then tapped the laptop screen. He gave us proof, he said. He confirmed your mother was coerced. And he left this laptop behind. Linda's breath trembled. So we can fight the will? Ethan's gaze held hers. We can burn it, he said, and we can expose whoever did this. Linda's throat tightened. And my father? Ethan's expression softened slightly. We'll find him, he promised. But first we go home, and we don't trust anyone until we know who's dirty. Linda's stomach twisted. Not even, Ethan cut her off gently. Especially not the people closest, he said. That night the mansion felt different, like the walls were listening. Linda stood in her room, staring at her reflection. The girl in the mirror looked like Linda, grown, polished, wearing a necklace Ethan gave her. But her eyes looked older, haunted. She heard a soft knock. Ethan entered without waiting, face drawn tight with exhaustion and anger. Security sweep is complete, he said. No breaches. Linda's hands trembled. Do you think he followed us? Ethan's gaze softened. No, he said. He wanted you to know he could. That's different. Linda swallowed. He talked about my mother like she was a problem. Ethan's jaw clenched. Because she was inconvenient to powerful people, he said. And powerful people don't like inconvenience. Linda's chest burned. I want to know who, she whispered. I want to know who made her suffer. Ethan stepped closer. We will, he said. Then quieter. But it might hurt. Linda's laugh was broken. Everything already hurts. Ethan's eyes darkened with something fierce. He lifted a hand, brushing her cheek. "Then let me be here while it does," he murmured. Linda's throat tightened. "Ethan, if it's your family—" Ethan didn't flinch. "Then I choose you," he said immediately, without hesitation. Linda's breath caught. He leaned closer, forehead nearly touching hers. "I found you once," he whispered. "I'm not losing you now, no matter who I have to destroy to keep you safe." Linda's pulse thundered. "That sounds terrifying," she whispered. Ethan's mouth curved, but there was no humor in it. "It is," he said, "for them." Linda stared at him, heart aching with fear and something warm, something unstoppable. Then she whispered, "Stay." Ethan's gaze searched hers. "Are you sure?" Linda nodded. "Please." Ethan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in his world, because she was. Linda buried her face in his chest. "I remembered his voice," she whispered. "I remembered my mother screaming." Ethan's arms tightened. "Tell me what you remember," he said gently. Linda closed her eyes, forcing herself back into the memory. "It was raining," she whispered. "My mother was pushing me behind her, like she was shielding me." Ethan murmured, "Good. Keep going." Linda's breathing shook. "A man was arguing with her," she said. "Not the masked man, someone else, someone important. She kept saying, 'You can't take her. She's my child.'" Ethan's body went still. Linda swallowed. "And the man said, 'She's proof.'" Her voice broke. "He said I was proof." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Proof of what?" he whispered, more to himself than to her. Linda shook her head, tears spilling. "I don't know," she sobbed, "but then I heard a car door, and then the masked man grabbed me." Her hands clenched in Ethan's shirt. "My mother was screaming my name," she whispered. "She was screaming it like she was dying." Ethan's voice was hoarse. "Linda." Linda pulled back, eyes red. "I want to know her name," she whispered. "My real name. I want to know who she was." Ethan's gaze softened. "We can," he said. "We have the file. We have the lawyers. We have the leads. We can find every detail." Linda nodded shakily. "And my father," she said. "If he exists, if he's real, I need to see him." Ethan's eyes darkened. "We will," he promised, "but we do it carefully." Linda whispered, "Because if he's connected to the powerful man—" Ethan's expression turned lethal again. "Then he might be the reason they took you," he said. Silence fell between them, heavy. Linda hugged herself. "Ethan, what if I'm the reason my mother died?" Ethan grabbed her hands firmly. "No," he said, voice absolute. "You were a child. The blame belongs to the monsters who used you as leverage." Linda's tears fell silently. Ethan's voice softened. "And if anyone deserves revenge," he murmured, "it's you." Linda's chest tightened. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Ethan leaned in, kissed her forehead gently. "You survived," he said. "That's strength. Now we turn it into power." The next morning, Ethan summoned his family. Not casually, not for tea. He called them into the formal sitting room, the one used for announcements and deals, where the air always smelled faintly of money and control. Mrs. Hawthorne arrived first. Elegant as ever, eyes sharp. Mr. Hawthorne followed, quiet but wary. A few other relatives drifted in, people Linda had known as distant presences, polite smiles, expensive perfume. Linda stood beside Ethan, spine straight, heart pounding. Ethan placed the warehouse laptop on the table like a bomb. "I have evidence," Ethan said calmly, "that someone with access to this family's private network participated in the coercion of Linda's mother." Silence fell like a blade. Mrs. Hawthorne's expression didn't change. "That's a serious accusation," she said coolly. Ethan's gaze was ice. "It's not an accusation," he replied. "It's a fact." Linda's hands clenched. Mr. Hawthorne frowned. "Ethan, what are you saying?" Ethan tapped the laptop. "This contains files detailing the forced will condition that attempted to trap Linda in a fraudulent marriage," he said. "It also confirms her mother was coerced." Mrs. Hawthorne's eyes flicked just briefly to Linda, and Linda felt it, a ripple in her memory, a scent, sharp floral perfume, a voice, cold, feminine. "She'll forget. Children always forget." Linda's breath caught. Her vision swam. Ethan glanced at her instantly. "Linda?" Linda swallowed hard, staring at Mrs. Hawthorne. Her voice trembled. "I remembered something," she whispered. Mrs. Hawthorne's expression sharpened just slightly. "How unfortunate." The words were soft, but they hit Linda like confirmation. Ethan's entire body went still. "What did you say?" he asked, voice dangerously quiet. Mrs. Hawthorne lifted her chin. "I said it's unfortunate she's distressed," she replied smoothly. But Linda heard the double meaning like a bell. She whispered, shaking, "That perfume." Mrs. Hawthorne's gaze snapped to Linda's necklace, then to Linda's face. For the first time, Linda saw something behind the woman's composure. Recognition. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Mother," he said slowly, "where were you the night Linda was found?" Mrs. Hawthorne's smile was thin. "At home," she said. "As you know." Ethan's voice was low. "Then why does Linda remember your perfume at the scene?" Silence, sharp, deadly. Mr. Hawthorne looked between them, confusion turning to alarm. "Ethan, what are you implying?" Ethan didn't blink. "I'm implying," he said, "that someone in this room knows more than they've ever admitted." Mrs. Hawthorne's eyes turned icy. "Careful," she warned. Ethan stepped forward. "No," he said. "You be careful." Linda's heart pounded so hard it hurt, because in that moment she understood what was happening. The truth wasn't out in the shadows. It was sitting in silk and diamonds, in a room full of family portraits and polished lies. And Ethan was about to set it on fire. Mrs. Hawthorne didn't flinch the way guilty people did in cheap dramas. She didn't gasp, clutch pearls, or sputter in outrage. She simply looked at Ethan as if he were a child interrupting adult conversation. "Perfume is not evidence," she said coolly, "and neither are half-remembered flashbacks from a traumatized girl." Linda's stomach twisted at the word girl. Not Linda. Not a person. A girl, small enough to dismiss. Ethan's voice went dangerously calm. "Then let's talk about evidence," he said, and nodded once toward his head of security. The man stepped forward and set a thin folder beside the laptop. Inside were printed banking records, a timeline, and several photographs taken by investigators. Mr. Hawthorne's brows drew together as he reached for the file. "Ethan, what is this?" Ethan didn't look away from his mother. "Financial transfers," he answered. "Offshore deposits routed through shell companies, payments that match the dates of intimidation attempts aimed at Linda." Mrs. Hawthorne's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "And you think that points to me?" Ethan tapped the folder. "One of the shell companies is registered to a trust you control," he said. "One you set up 2 decades ago, quietly, without father's signature." Silence tightened around the room. Mr. Hawthorne's face lost color. "That's not possible," he said, voice hoarse. "Claudia, tell him—" Mrs. Hawthorne's smile stayed in place, but her gaze sharpened into something cold enough to cut. "Your son is spiraling," she said. "He's grieving a fantasy romance and looking for a villain." Linda's skin prickled. Ethan stepped forward, the air around him turning heavy. "Don't you dare bring Linda into this like she's a pawn," he said. Mrs. Hawthorne's eyes flicked to Linda, then back to Ethan. and her smile became faintly amused. "Isn't she?" she asked softly. "Wasn't she always?" Linda's breath caught. The words slammed into her chest like a fist, not because they were new, but because some part of Linda recognized them. A memory fragment flashed so vividly, Linda's knees nearly buckled. A woman's voice, smooth and bored. "You can't love her. You can only keep her." Linda's fingers dug into Ethan's sleeve. Ethan felt it instantly. "Linda," he said quietly without turning. "Talk to me." Linda swallowed hard, staring at Mrs. Hawthorne. I remember you," she whispered. Mrs. Hawthorne's composure tightened, the smallest crack forming at the edge. Linda's voice shook. "Not here. Not in this room," she said, breath ragged. "I remember you somewhere dark, somewhere that smelled like damp concrete." Mr. Hawthorne's face twisted with confusion and horror. "What is she talking about?" Ethan's voice was low and lethal. "She's talking about the truth." Mrs. Hawthorne set her teacup down with deliberate precision. "Enough," she said, the warmth draining from her voice. "This is obscene." Ethan leaned toward her. "Then clear your name," he said. "Open your accounts. Hand over your records. Give my investigators everything." Mrs. Hawthorne lifted her chin. "No," she said simply, "because I won't be interrogated in my own home." Ethan's laugh was short and sharp, without humor. "Your home?" he echoed. "You mean the home you used to cage a missing child in plain sight?" Linda flinched. "Ethan." But Ethan wasn't looking at Linda now. He was looking at something behind his mother's eyes, something he'd never let himself truly see. Mr. Hawthorne stood abruptly, voice shaking. "Claudia, did you have anything to do with this?" Mrs. Hawthorne's gaze shifted to her husband, as if he were a mild inconvenience. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "Answer me," Mr. Hawthorne snapped, startling everyone in the room. Mrs. Hawthorne's stare sharpened. "You've lived comfortably for decades," she said, voice icy. "Do you really want to question the machinery that built that comfort?" Mr. Hawthorne's mouth opened, then closed. Linda's stomach dropped. Ethan's expression turned into pure steel. "So that's it," he said softly. "That's your confession." Mrs. Hawthorne sighed as if bored. "You want a confession?" she murmured. "Fine." The room went still. Even the distant relatives, people who'd been watching like spectators, leaned in without meaning to. Mrs. Hawthorne's gaze slid to Linda, and something like disdain settled over her features. "You were never supposed to be found," she said calmly. Linda's heart stopped. Ethan's hand shot out, gripping the back of a chair to steady himself. Mr. Hawthorne staggered as if struck. "Claudia," Mrs. Hawthorne continued unbothered. "The plan wasn't to hurt you," she told Linda, voice almost conversational. "You were a child. You would have been placed somewhere quiet, somewhere you couldn't disrupt anything important." Linda's breath came in shallow bursts. "Disrupt what?" she whispered. Mrs. Hawthorne's eyes gleamed. "Reputations," she said. A cold wave rolled through Linda. "My mother," she choked. "What did you do to her?" Mrs. Hawthorne tilted her head. "She made a foolish choice," she replied. "She fell in love with a man who belonged to someone else, someone with a family name that couldn't survive scandal." Linda's ears rang. Ethan's voice was a rasp. "Who?" he demanded. Mrs. Hawthorne didn't answer immediately. She looked at Ethan as if considering whether he deserved the full truth. Then she said very softly, "Your father." The world didn't just tilt, it shattered. Mr. Hawthorne went white. No," he whispered. "No." Ethan didn't move. He didn't blink. He looked like a statue carved out of rage. Linda's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her mind scrambled to reject the words, to twist them into something else. "Liar," Ethan said finally, voice deadly quiet. Mrs. Hawthorne's smile returned, sharp as glass. "Am I?" she asked. "Ask him." Mr. Hawthorne's lips trembled. "Ethan," he whispered. Ethan's gaze snapped to his father. "Tell me," he said. "Right now. Tell me she's lying." Mr. Hawthorne's shoulders sagged as if he'd aged 20 years in one breath. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Linda's vision blurred with sudden tears, hot and furious. The memory flashes that had been fragments began to assemble into something horrifyingly coherent. A man's silhouette, a voice saying, "She's proof," her mother pleading, a woman's perfume, Mrs. Hawthorne's perfume, cutting through the air like a signature. Linda swayed, dizzy with the weight of it. Ethan caught her automatically, one arm steadying her at the waist. "Linda," he said, voice tight but gentle. "Breathe." Linda shook her head, barely able to form words. My father is him," she whispered. Mr. Hawthorne flinched, shame flooding his face. Mrs. Hawthorne's voice was smooth. "Yes," she said, "and your existence threatened everything I built." Linda stared at her, shaking. "You took me," she whispered. "You took me away from my mother." Mrs. Hawthorne didn't deny it. "I protected my family," she replied. "I protected my son." Ethan's head snapped toward her. "Don't say you protected me," he said, voice cracking with fury. "You destroyed someone else's child to preserve your image." Mrs. Hawthorne's eyes narrowed. "I did what was necessary," she said. "Your father's weakness would have ruined us. That woman's grief was unfortunate, but manageable." Linda's stomach churned. "She died," Linda whispered, voice raw. "She died heartbroken because I was gone." Mrs. Hawthorne's gaze remained cold. "Grief is survivable," she said. "People adapt." Linda's hands curled into fists. "You're a monster." Mrs. Hawthorne's smile was thin. "Monsters," she said, "are just people willing to do what others can't." Ethan's voice turned lethal. "You coerced her into signing the will," he said. "You forced the condition." Mrs. Hawthorne nodded like he'd finally understood something simple. "Yes," she said. "It was leverage, a final tether." Linda's breath hitched. "Why, Ro?" she demanded through tears. "Why trap me with him?" Mrs. Hawthorne's eyes gleamed. "Because Ro was obedient," she said, "and because the marriage would have kept you controlled, contained, under an agreement, under watch." Ethan's grip tightened around Linda as if he could anchor her in the middle of the storm. Mr. Hawthorne's voice cracked. "Claudia, you paid men to—" He swallowed hard. "To take her?" Mrs. Hawthorne looked at her husband with mild contempt. "Don't pretend you're innocent," she said. "You let it happen by being weak. You let that woman into your life and left me to clean up the damage." Mr. Hawthorne staggered back, tears in his eyes. "I loved her," he whispered. Linda's throat closed around a sob. Her mother. Loved, then abandoned. Ethan's voice shook, fury and grief colliding. "And you let my mother do this," he said to his father. "You let her steal a child." Mr. Hawthorne looked at Ethan like his heart was breaking. "I didn't know she'd—" He started, then his voice broke. "I didn't know she'd go that far." Mrs. Hawthorne scoffed. "Liar," she said, and the word landed like a slap. "You always knew." Mr. Hawthorne crumpled into a chair, face in his hands. Linda stared at him, at the man who had raised Ethan, the man who had sat across from her at dinners, the man who had called her dear with quiet kindness, now revealed as the man whose blood ran in her veins. Linda's stomach twisted with grief and rage. "You're my father," she whispered, voice hollow. Mr. Hawthorne looked up, eyes wet. "Linda," he said, voice trembling. Linda flinched away as if the word burned. "Don't," she said, shaking. "Don't say my name like you deserve it." Ethan stepped between them instinctively, as if shielding Linda from more harm. Mrs. Hawthorne rose, smoothing her dress, perfectly composed. "Well," she said, "now that you've had your melodrama, what will you do?" Ethan's eyes were ice. "I'm going to ruin you," he said quietly. Mrs. Hawthorne's smile widened, amused. "With what?" she asked. "Words? Emotions? Your little laptop?" Ethan nodded once toward his legal counsel, who had been waiting near the doorway. The lawyer stepped forward, holding a phone. "The confession has been recorded," he said. "Audio and video." Mrs. Hawthorne's composure flickered for the first time. Ethan's voice remained calm. "And the offshore transfers," he added, "and the coercion documents, and the chain of custody evidence from the warehouse." Mrs. Hawthorne's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't," she said softly. Ethan stepped forward, voice low. "Watch me." Mrs. Hawthorne's gaze cut to Linda. "Do you want this?" she asked, voice suddenly sharp. "You want to destroy the only family you've known?" Linda's hands shook, tears spilling. "You were never my family," she whispered. "You were my cage." Mrs. Hawthorne's face hardened. "Ungrateful," Ethan's voice snapped. "Enough." Security moved in, not touching her but blocking the exits. The lawyer's voice was steady. "Mrs. Hawthorne, you are being served with a restraining order and a notice of investigation," he said. "You are also required to surrender your devices and financial records." Mrs. Hawthorne's laugh was brittle. "You think you can arrest me in my own home?" Ethan leaned closer. "This isn't arrest," he said softly. "This is the beginning of the end." Mrs. Hawthorne's gaze flared with rage. "You're choosing her," she hissed. Ethan didn't blink. "Yes," he said, "every time." Mrs. Hawthorne's eyes glittered, then she turned sharply and walked out with her head high, as if the room belonged to her, even as it slipped away. The aftermath was not clean, it was not instant, but it was unstoppable. Within 24 hours, Ethan's legal team filed for emergency injunctions and opened a formal criminal complaint using the recorded confession and financial evidence. Investigators coordinated with authorities. The shell accounts began to freeze. The people Mrs. Hawthorne had paid, Rose's handler, the masked man, the pipeline of intimidation, became traceable under pressure. Rowe tried to flee. He didn't get far. He was pulled off a private highway outside the city, the car boxed in by unmarked vehicles. When they brought him in, his arrogance was gone, replaced by panic and sweat. Linda didn't go to see him. She didn't need to. The evidence spoke in her place. The masked man, Victor as he was finally identified, lasted 3 more days before being caught trying to cross a border with cash and a burner phone. Under interrogation, he gave names, addresses, timelines. He had done Mrs. Hawthorne's dirty work for years, then kept working because blackmail was a tighter chain than money. And in the middle of the storm, Linda's life changed in quieter, more painful ways. Because the truth didn't just expose villains, it rewrote her identity. Mr. Hawthorne requested a meeting with Linda. Ethan refused at first, but Linda, after a long night of shaking in Ethan's arms, finally said, voice thin, "I need to hear him. I need to look him in the eyes and decide what he is to me." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You don't owe him anything." "I know," Linda whispered, "but I owe myself closure." So Ethan arranged it, on Linda's terms with security present, in a neutral private room. Mr. Hawthorne looked older than Linda remembered, like his guilt had finally found gravity. He stood when she entered. Linda. Linda didn't sit right away. She stood across from him, arms crossed, heart pounding. "You're my father," she said, voice flat. Mr. Hawthorne swallowed, eyes shining. "Yes," he whispered. Linda's throat burned. "Did you love my mother?" His face twisted. "I did," he said. "I still—" "Did you protect her?" Linda cut in. His eyes flinched. "No," he admitted, voice breaking. "And I will live with that until I die." Linda's hands trembled. "Why didn't you stop her?" she demanded. "Why didn't you stop your wife from taking me?" Mr. Hawthorne's shoulders sagged. "I didn't know at first," he whispered. "When you disappeared, your mother—" He swallowed hard, pain flooding his face. "She came to me. She begged. She said people were following her. She said she was being threatened." Linda's stomach twisted. "And you did nothing." Tears slipped down Mr. Hawthorne's cheeks. "I was afraid," he admitted. "I thought if Claudia found out the full truth, she'd destroy her. And she did anyway." Linda's breath shook. "So you chose yourself," she said bitterly. "You chose comfort over your child." Mr. Hawthorne flinched as if struck. "Yes," he whispered, "and it's the greatest sin of my life." Linda's eyes burned. "My mother died heartbroken." Mr. Hawthorne nodded, tears falling. "I know," he said. "I found out too late." Linda's voice cracked. "Why did she force me to marry Roe in her will?" Mr. Hawthorne's breath hitched. "She didn't want that," he whispered. "Claudia forced it. Your mother was cornered. She was told she'd never see you again unless she signed. She thought if she complied, they'd at least keep you alive." Linda's knees nearly buckled. Ethan's hand tightened around hers, grounding her. Mr. Hawthorne looked at Ethan then, shame and regret twisting his expression. "You," he whispered. "You saved her." Ethan's voice was cold. "Don't thank me," he said. "You don't get to borrow my decency to cleanse your guilt." Mr. Hawthorne lowered his head. Linda stared at her biological father, this broken man, and felt an unexpected, complicated thing. Not forgiveness, but clarity. "You don't get to be my father just because blood says so," Linda said quietly. Mr. Hawthorne's voice was raw. "I know," he whispered. Linda swallowed hard. "But you can help me honor my mother," she said. "Tell me everything about her." Mr. Hawthorne's eyes lifted, startled. "You want to know?" Linda nodded, tears slipping free. "I want to know who she was," she whispered. "I want to know her laugh, her favorite song, the way she held me." Mr. Hawthorne's face crumpled. "She was brave," he said, voice shaking. "Too brave for the world she was in. She loved you more than anything." Linda pressed a hand to her mouth, sobbing. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders and pulled her close, holding her as she cried for a mother she couldn't remember, but suddenly missed with a pain that felt ancient. Weeks passed. Mrs. Hawthorne's downfall was swift once the first cracks appeared. High society friends distanced themselves, board members resigned, the press circled, the authorities moved, the shell companies collapsed like paper walls. She was not arrested immediately. People like her rarely were, but her power evaporated under sunlight. And without power, she was just a woman with a sharp tongue and too many enemies. On the day her accounts were formally seized, she called Ethan. He put it on speaker. Linda stood beside him in the study, hands clenched. Mrs. Hawthorne's voice came through, smooth but edged. "You've made your choice." Ethan's tone was flat. "Yes." "You think she'll love you forever?" Mrs. Hawthorne hissed. "She'll resent you, for your family, for your money, for her past." Linda's stomach twisted, but she lifted her chin. Ethan's voice turned colder. "You don't get to speak about love," he said. "You only understand possession." Mrs. Hawthorne's breath sharpened. "I did this for you." Ethan's reply was a blade. "No," he said. "You did it for your pride, and you broke people to feed it." Silence. Then Mrs. Hawthorne's voice dropped, dangerous. "If you keep pushing, you'll lose everything." Ethan's mouth curved slightly. "I already won," he said, "because she's free." He ended the call. Linda exhaled shakily. Ethan turned toward her and, without saying anything, pulled her into his arms. For a long moment they just stood there, holding each other, breathing in the quiet that had been stolen from Linda for most of her life. "You okay?" Ethan asked softly. Linda's voice trembled. "I think I will be," she whispered. "But I don't know who I am without all this fear." Ethan kissed her forehead gently. "Then we find out," he murmured. Ethan didn't just protect Linda after that. He rebuilt her life like it was sacred. He helped her legally sever every forced tie. The will's condition was voided in court, declared coerced and fraudulent. Her inheritance was released without marriage requirements, and a separate fund was established in her mother's name, something Linda insisted on, so her mother's life became more than tragedy. Linda also did something Ethan didn't expect. She moved out of the mansion. Not because she didn't want Ethan, because she wanted herself. Ethan bought a place for her, bright, secure, overlooking the water. Not a gilded palace, but a home that felt like Linda could breathe in it. "I'm not trying to buy you," Ethan told her the day he handed her the keys, eyes serious. "I'm trying to give you choices." Linda's throat tightened. "You already did," she whispered. Still, Ethan spoiled her in the small ways that mattered. A stocked fridge because Linda forgot to eat when she was anxious. A private therapist with experience in memory recovery trauma. A security team that stayed invisible unless needed. A library filled with books Linda had once said she wished she'd read. And on the first night in the new place, when Linda stood in the empty living room feeling both free and terrified, Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind. "This is yours," he murmured. Linda leaned back into him. "I'm scared to be happy," she admitted. Ethan's mouth brushed her hair. "Happiness feels unsafe when you've been punished for existing," he said gently. "But you're not being punished anymore." Linda turned, eyes shining. "Promise?" Ethan held her gaze. "I don't promise lightly," he said. "But yes, I promise." Linda rose on her toes and kissed him, slow and steady. Not desperate this time. Chosen. When she pulled back, she whispered, "Stay." Ethan's eyes darkened. "Linda, I want you here," she said, voice trembling but sure. "Not because I need saving, because I want you." Ethan's control cracked in the softest way, relief flooding his face. He cupped her cheek, reverent. "Then I'm yours," he whispered. Months later, Linda's memories didn't return all at once. They arrived like scattered photographs in a shoebox, some sharp, some blurred, some too painful to hold for long. She learned her mother's name. She learned her mother's laugh had been loud, fearless. She learned her mother used to hum while braiding Linda's hair. She learned her mother had written letters for years after Linda disappeared, letters she never sent but kept in a wooden box. Mr. Hawthorne handed them over one afternoon with shaking hands. Linda sat on her new balcony with Ethan beside her and opened the first letter. The handwriting was soft, slightly slanted, and the words were simple. "My baby, I don't know where you are, but I love you in every direction the world has." Linda broke. She cried until her chest hurt, until the grief poured out like something that had been waiting behind her ribs for years. Ethan held her the entire time, his hand resting over her heart like he could steady it. When Linda could finally breathe, she whispered, "She never stopped loving me." Ethan's voice was thick. "No," he murmured, "she didn't." Linda stared at the horizon. "I want to honor her," she said quietly, "not just grieve her." Ethan kissed her temple. "Tell me how," he said. So Linda created something, a foundation in her mother's name, dedicated to missing children and families trapped by legal coercion. She funded private investigators for cold cases. She built support systems for parents who couldn't afford lawyers. She turned her pain into a weapon against the kind of monsters who had stolen her. And Ethan supported every step, without taking control. Because he learned too. He learned loving Linda meant letting her lead. On the 1-year anniversary of the day Linda ended the wedding, Ethan took her back to the rooftop garden where he'd once tried to give her peace in the middle of chaos. The lanterns glowed again. The city lights were softer tonight. The air smelled like flowers and clean night. Linda stood near the edge, hands resting on the railing, star pendant warm at her throat. Ethan approached behind her. "Do you remember what you asked me here?" he murmured. Linda smiled faintly, eyes shining. "I asked what you were supposed to be," she said. Ethan's arms slid around her waist. "And what did I say?" Linda turned in his arms, looking up at him. "You said you were supposed to be mine," she whispered. Ethan's gaze held hers. "Still true," he murmured. "If you still want it." Linda's laugh was soft through tears. "I do," she said, "but not like a cage, not like ownership." Ethan nodded, serious. "Then say what you want," he said, "and I'll meet you there." Linda took a shaky breath. "I want a life," she said, "a real one, with messy mornings and quiet nights, with freedom, with choice." Ethan's hand lifted, brushing her cheek. "You have it," he said. Linda's throat tightened. "And I want love," she whispered. "Not the kind that controls, the kind that stays." Ethan's voice was a vow. "I stay," he said. Linda swallowed hard. "Then I want you," she finished, voice trembling. "As my partner, my home." Ethan's eyes softened, something bright breaking through the stormy intensity he'd carried for so long. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Linda froze. "Ethan." He opened it. Inside wasn't an enormous diamond, not a showpiece for headlines. It was a ring with a small star-shaped stone set into the band. Simple, elegant, unmistakably Linda. "I'm not asking to own you," Ethan said, voice low and rough. "I'm asking to choose you every day, and to have you choose me back." Linda's breath hitched. "Ethan." He dropped to one knee. The billionaire heir, the ruthless protector, the man who'd been feared in boardrooms, kneeling in front of her like she was the most important thing in the universe. "Linda," he whispered, "will you marry me?" Linda's hands flew to her mouth, tears spilling. For a moment she saw it all, the lost child, the stolen years, the heartbreak, the trap, the fear. And then she saw who she was now. A woman who survived, a woman who reclaimed her name, a woman who turned pain into purpose, and beside her, Ethan, not as her savior, but as the man who had loved her long enough to wait for her to be ready. Linda nodded, sobbing. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Ethan exhaled like a man who'd been holding his breath for years. He stood and slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. Then he kissed her, slow, reverent, full of promises kept. When they pulled back, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "You're safe," he murmured. Linda's voice was soft, steady. "I'm free," she corrected. Ethan's mouth curved. "And loved," he added. Linda smiled through tears. "And loved," she agreed. Epilogue. The trial that followed wasn't glamorous. It was brutal, public, and necessary. Mrs. Hawthorne fought like she'd always fought. Sharp lawyers, threats, cold arrogance. But she was finally facing something she couldn't buy. Truth. Victor took a plea deal and testified. Rose's fraud charges stuck. The coercion networks were dismantled. Mrs. Hawthorne lost her influence, her wealth, and her carefully curated legacy. She didn't apologize. She didn't have the soul for it. But she lost. And Linda won something bigger than revenge. She won her future. On the day Linda and Ethan married, it wasn't in a cathedral filled with strangers or a venue designed for headlines. It was on a quiet estate near the sea, where the wind smelled like salt and beginnings. Linda wore a simple dress that moved like water. Ethan looked at her like she was the only miracle he believed in. There were no cameras, only people who mattered. Before the ceremony, Linda stepped away for a moment and walked to a small table where a framed photo sat. Her mother, smiling brightly, holding a baby Linda. Linda touched the frame gently. "I'm sorry I couldn't come back sooner," she whispered, "but I'm here now. And I'm okay." She placed the star pendant beside the photo for a moment, then put it back around her neck. When she returned, Ethan was waiting at the altar, eyes shining. He reached for her hands as she approached, and in that moment the story that began with a missing child and a broken heart ended with something simple, something powerful. A woman reclaiming her life, and a man who loved her enough to let her be free. Linda squeezed Ethan's hands, looked into his eyes, and smiled. Not because she had been saved, but because she had survived and chosen love anyway.